When people hear about homeowners associations, they usually think of neighborhood rules, lawn regulations, or the occasional petty argument about paint colors. But for one man, the HOA wasn't just a group of neighbors with clipboards. It turned into a nightmare fueled by intimidation, manipulation, and outright threats. And it all started with one woman, someone who had crowned herself queen of the neighborhood, but who was known behind closed doors as a Karen. This woman wasn't satisfied with enforcing the rules for the families who had willingly joined the HOA. She decided that even those who lived outside its boundaries needed to be controlled. Her obsession wasn't about community standards. It was about power, money, and control. And when one homeowner politely refused to join, she didn't just send a letter, she didn't just make a phone call, she sent muscle. Yes, you heard that right. She sent actual men to try to strong-arm a homeowner into paying dues and following rules he was never legally bound to follow. These weren't polite neighbors with flyers. They were thugs who banged on doors, shouted threats, and thought intimidation would break him down. What they didn't expect was that this homeowner wasn't the kind of person you could bully. They didn't know about the K-9 trained to protect him. They didn't know about the shotgun he legally owned. And they certainly didn't know that the county sheriff himself would eventually step in. What started as a typical HOA harassment story spiraled into something straight out of a standoff, except this wasn't some Hollywood drama. This was real life. And it serves as a warning. If you think an HOA can't cross the line into criminal behavior, think again. By the time the dust settled, the so-called Karen realized she had bitten off far more than she could chew. Her little scheme didn't just fail, it backfired in a way that made the entire neighborhood rethink what kind of person was really running things. And as for the homeowner, he learned that standing his ground, even against harassment and intimidation, was the only way to protect his home, his rights, and his peace of mind. So let's go back to where it all began. The day he first received that knock on the door, the moment he realized this wasn't just about lawn rules, and the shocking way it all ended with deputies, paperwork, and one humiliated HOA president. The homeowner had bought his property precisely because it was outside of the HOA boundaries. He wanted peace, independence, and freedom from the constant nitpicking rules. His deed and legal documents were clear. His house was not part of the association. But that didn't stop the self-appointed queen of the neighborhood, the HOA president, from insisting otherwise. It began with letters. First came the welcome letter, congratulating him for joining the HOA and demanding payment of dues. He ignored it, knowing full well he was not obligated. Then came the second letter, this time worded more aggressively, with threats of fines. Still, he ignored it. Finally came the third, a letter accusing him of violations for not keeping his lawn up to their standards. This was when he knew things were going beyond a mistake. This was harassment. When he finally confronted the HOA president, she insisted that all properties in the neighborhood must comply. He calmly explained that his property was exempt, backed up by the legal paperwork. But she wasn't interested in facts. She wanted compliance. And when she didn't get it, she escalated. One afternoon, loud banging echoed through his front door. When he opened it, two men stood there, broad-shouldered and scowling. They weren't wearing badges. They weren't process servers. They were hired muscle, and their message was simple. Pay your dues, or things are going to get difficult. But intimidation doesn't work when the target has prepared for exactly this kind of nonsense. His German Shepherd, a trained K-9, stood tall and growling at the door. The men immediately took a step back, clearly not expecting resistance. And when he calmly stepped out, shotgun in hand, held legally and pointed safely toward the ground, they realized this wasn't the pushover they had imagined. The men stammered excuses, backing away, muttering that they were just there to deliver a message. He told them plainly, "If you step foot on my property again, you'll be explaining yourselves to the sheriff." Sure enough, the HOA president wasn't finished. She tried to twist the situation by filing a complaint, claiming the homeowner had threatened her representatives. But the truth always has a way of catching up. When deputies arrived and reviewed the situation, it was clear the homeowner had acted within his rights. He had never aimed his weapon at anyone, he had simply stood his ground. And the HOA president, she had no legal authority whatsoever to enforce rules on his property. The sheriff didn't just dismiss her claims, he warned her. He told her point blank that sending uninvited men to a private property under false pretenses could be considered trespassing, harassment, and even attempted extortion. She didn't like hearing it, but the law was the law. The story didn't end there, though. The HOA president's reputation began to crumble. Word spread quickly through the neighborhood about what had happened, the intimidation attempts, the lies, and the sheriff's involvement. Neighbors who once followed her out of fear or ignorance began questioning her leadership. Some even withdrew from the HOA altogether. As for the homeowner, he documented everything. Every letter, every visit, every false claim, he kept it all neatly filed away. Because if there's one thing HOA bullies hate, it's evidence. And with that evidence, he made it clear that if harassment continued, he would take legal action of his own. In the end, the HOA Karen who thought she could strong-arm him into compliance wound up humiliated, exposed, and powerless. The thugs she sent, they never showed their faces again. The sheriff's warning had been more than enough. What remains is a story that serves as both a warning and a lesson. HOAs are supposed to exist for the benefit of communities, but when power-hungry individuals twist them into personal weapons, things can get ugly fast. Yet, standing firm, knowing your rights, and refusing to be bullied can turn the tide. This wasn't just about dues or lawn rules. It was about freedom, property rights, and refusing to bow to intimidation. And in this case, the homeowner's courage, and his willingness to back it up with both a loyal K-9 and the law on his side, proved stronger than any HOA bully's threats.